All right. So welcome everyone. It's great to have some. I mean, I'll just say it's amazing to have the whole world we have here today. We're across the globe here. We've got southern and northern hemispheres all talking about internal comms with three of just fantastic people. Natasha, Wayne, and Adrian. Welcome. I said that it's going to be a bit of an informal chat, but actually, between me and you, I'm very excited by it because I know you've got some of the newest research out there that you can be talking about today. I've also said I kind of fly the flag for strategic as well. Mike Klein's away doing his talk in Paris. And so I'm flying the flag for him too, as well as hosting today. So I'll try to stumble through hosting. I'm not going to do too much of an intro to me. My name's Dan Sodergren. I do some stuff around internal comms. I've been very lucky in the last 5 years or so to do keynotes around AI, technology, and the future of work for a variety of different people. The comms hero, comms rebel, comms everything in there. The IOIC and lots of things. I also, of course, Mike, sorry, I also write for strategic as well. So there you go. Not just a speaker, but also a writer. But I'm going to hand over to the three people here who are doing all this clever research and all the clever writing behind the scenes around internal comms and are changing the internal communications world. So without further ado, I'm going to be kind of old fashioned. I'm going to say ladies first here, Natasha. I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So I'm Natasha Gonsalves. You can find me on LinkedIn. My background is predominantly internal communication and change communication. I've worked in London, predominantly in financial services. I'm now currently living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And yeah.
I love that. In fact, it's not just the UK. We've got Amsterdam as well. We've got Europe, and we've got the Southern Hemisphere, Australia, and other places. I always know, Adrian, you're always jetting around the world. I think last time we chatted, you were in Venice, weren't you? So I'm going to go over to Adrian next, only because that was my segue. Did you see how clever I was there? So Adrian, over to you to introduce yourself and say how amazing you are.
You did very well with the segue there. And yes, the last time we spoke, I was in Venice and I was running across St. Marco's Square late to get onto our call. We was doing our AI forum. So I'm Adrian Cropley. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. My history is internal communication when nobody knew what internal comms was. And so that is dating me just a little bit. But, I've been involved with the communication profession now for over 35 years. I like to say I keep up with things, and that's why AI has become a bit of a passion for me now, because I have to say, and this is something I've shared with everyone on this call, is that when we navigated our way into social media as a communication profession, I think we were slow to the table, well and truly. And we said, let's not get caught out with AI. We've done the first of the research with the Centre for Strategic Communication Excellence, which is my organisation, which I work with Sia Papagiorgio, who's my partner in crime, and many people will know. But we started researching AI back in 2016-17, just when we knew it was coming along as a public thing on the network. As far as we know, it's been around for a long time. But yes, huge advocate for internal comms, but mostly into strategic comms, and looking forward to sharing the research today.
Love that. I've got to remember not to keep putting myself on mute. The reason why I do it, of course, is as a host, I sometimes interrupt, get too excited. So I make sure I can put myself on mute so I can at least say clever things like, over to you, Wayne, to explain how amazing you are too, and where you're from, and also your organisation. And I'll promise I won't interrupt, but I might not put myself on mute. So Wayne, over to you. You are on mute, by the way.
I'm a technologist, obviously. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Wayne Aspland. I've worked in communications now for a bit over 20 years, mainly in internal comms and leadership comms and also change comms. I guess deep down, and Dan, I think I've heard you say this about yourself as well, that deep down I'm really a massive nerd. And when I first started hearing about this thing called AI, back in 2007, and around the same time as Adrian. Actually, we were sort of researching it in separate streams, if you like, and we spoke about it later. But I wrote my first paper on AI and comms back in 2017. I wrote another one earlier this year, which is actually looking at the future of comms in a world of AI and accelerating change, which is an area that really interests me. And yeah, so I sort of tend to think of myself as a comms person, but also a bit of an AI tragic.
The fact that we are admitting the fact that we might be a bit geeky, we might be a bit nerdy, I think actually that might just be the modern world. I think everyone's starting to get a bit more geeky and nerdy. Or is it the fact that the geeks have finally taken over the world? I think
that's it. I think that's it.
I think that they've coloured the rest of the world by simply taking over. I think it was a biblical reference said that. I know that's not true. I was about to say the Greeks will take over the world. That's not a biblical reference. My dad would kill me. My dad's a vicar. He would shoot me for that moment. That's not even slightly biblical. But thinking about not the Bible, but how the world is changing, I think that's something that your research is all pointing to, isn't it? The fact that, okay, the world has changed, AI's come around, but really we've got to think of it almost selfishly from an internal comms point of view, right? We've got to actually say, okay, what is the lay of the land right now? And that's why I'm really interested in the research that you folks are all going to be talking about. Again, I'm going to be kind of old-fashioned and go to Natasha first, but only because I know that with Natasha's research, you were kind of looking at maybe some more of the kind of the stories behind it and not just the trends. So do you want to give us some kind of insight that you found? And then I'll most probably pass over to Adrian and then Wayne again, but only because that's how we started.
Yeah, exactly, Dan. So my study was less around collecting stats. It was ideally to uncover some use cases, so real world applications of Gen AI from within internal communication. So my expectation was that I would come out with a wide selection of use cases, so people are using these Gen AI tools for doing various different things in their roles, and then share that knowledge almost like a little, maybe a guide or more for inspirational knowledge. Yeah, so that was my initial aim.
I absolutely love the idea of not just using stats, but using stories and individual use cases. And perhaps that's one of the things that we've got to look for. And kind of not putting you too much on the spot, but some of those I know because we've chatted about it before, Natasha. So I've been a bit naughty here, but I know that some of those use cases were, I mean, again, were they surprising to you? You've worked in internal comms for a long time. Were they a little bit surprising, like the angle of where this is going or how people are using AI?
Yeah, I was surprised because I thought there would be more around creating personas, something around listening, so sentiment analysis. So some of these more around data analysis, but typically most of the responses are around content creation, content refinement, so improving the quality, or idea generation or editing. So more of the tactical things, really.
Okay, so certainly from the stories that you've got there, that the way that internal comms people are using it isn't necessarily the slightly more, dare I say it, geeky, data-driven way that they're using. But I suppose my other question is, and again, I'm old marketeer, so I always think this. I think Simon Sinek, as it says, start with your why. I always think you say start with the who, right? You actually start with who's doing it, but also. And I suppose when it comes to AI, it's like the who isn't a who, is it? It's not a person. It's a type of AI. So what did you find from here? What did you find? What kind of tools are people using? I know also there's thousands out there, so I'm not going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What's your feeling? Are they just using one or two? What's your feeling on
that? Yeah, it was generally Chat GPT, Microsoft Copilot. And some of them had their own internal one that they were using. A couple of people mentioned Llama, and one I'd never heard of called Napkin.
Yeah, Napkin's a thing, definitely. I can vouch they haven't made that up. To be fair, Napkin is definitely one. It's actually quite a good one, to be fair. Funnily enough, I'm doing a keynote tonight for my old university. Little name drop there for me, and I'll let you into a secret. I make up one of the the AI systems. So I asked them all, what AI systems are you using? ChatGPT, Mistral, Llama, Uvavu, and of course Uvavu. I've made that one up, but I've made a little cheeky logo so it appears. I'm hoping that somebody in the audience puts their hands up, and we can kind of slightly roast them for being overly geeky and pretending. Uvavu, again, you'd have to be from the UK for this one. A very semi-funny guy called Vic Reeves used to say Uvavu on this TV program. I'm showing my age here. It's not really important. What is important, of course, is the great research that Adrian's also doing. So, Adrian, I'm going to hand over to you because it sounds like, from what Natasha's saying, there's lots of these different tools being used. Sounds like mainly Copilot is kind of a big one as well. But I suppose, this is the thing that Mike wanted me to talk about, is the amount that people are using it. So I know that Mike's looked into some stats here, and he was umming and ahhing about, are we using AI enough in internal comms anyway? Are we really leading the charge enough? And I think from what he could see, and I think his keynote is trying to inspire folk to use it more, not just the different types, but actually to use it more entirely. And I know that links into some of the things that you found, Adrian. So I'm going to hand over to you now.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. And it's interesting when you hear, are we using it enough? And I think it's the conversation that I think concerns me a little bit is it about the tool? Is it about the outcome that we're trying to get? And I think the evolution of internal comms is, how are these tools going to get us to a better, more efficient, more quality-driven outcome? And I think in the research that we were looking at, and just a little bit of background into that research. So it was research that was commissioned by the Global Alliance for Public Relations and Communication Management. And we put this research together in conjunction with the Centre for Strategic Communication Excellence and Lighthouse Reputation, which is Bonnie Caver, who sits on the board of the GA. So the reason I was in Venice is we were talking about this research and how it informs responsible AI into the future. And we'll cover that maybe a little bit after. But in terms of usage, people aren't allowed to use tools, is what we're finding within organizations, but they're not getting the support to actually understand. So they're not getting the support in terms of training, how to use the tools. It's very much I find my tool, I'll bring it in and I'll start using it either in the organization or outside if I'm not allowed to actually use it. So there's something like 91% are allowed to use AI, but there was a significant governance gap where there was only 39.4% of organizations that have things like responsible AI frameworks in place. So that was one of the big stats that came out of there. There's some other key topics, but we might cover those as we go through. But I think that the key insight was very much around the governance of the use of responsible AI and the concern of the changing role for communication. And I think that gets back to what I kind of earlier said is AI literacy is one thing, and we should be in there and playing with AI, but it's are we getting the literacy to how to effectively use AI to do the jobs that we're doing? And it's probably a good segue into Wayne's thinking too. I was
about to say, Adrian, you obviously do this professionally because that is probably the best intro into what Wayne does as you possibly could have got. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but thank goodness that you did. So Wayne, over to you to kind of to dovetail this whole moment together.
Yeah, so I think if I think about the last few months and what I've been doing, I released the report on 2030 a few months ago now. And what I've been doing since then, you'd all know this, there's been a lot of different research reports come out about internal comms in the last few months. And so I've been keeping an eye on those really to try and understand what, I suppose, validate what I said. And those reports do largely validate it. The other thing is to sort of bring it back to starting to think about, I've talked about 2030, but what does that mean for today? What are our priorities right now? And I must say the one thing in all of this that's really stopped me in my tracks in the last few months has been this quite a lot of research coming out showing how companies are quite stressed by change at the moment. I mean, we're seeing, I think Gartner said, there's only about 44% of people who are willing to accept change at the moment, which is a significant drop on what it was a few years ago. We've got a lot of companies reporting manager burnout, and we've got a number of different companies. I mean, Writer put something out, Korn Ferry, Axios HQ have all talked about this sort of fracturing alignment in organisations. So there is a lot of stress out there in organisations, and this, as I say, this really sort of stopped me in my tracks because, I mean, if you look at it from the bad news point of view, the bad news is that we're being stressed by a level of change which is only going to grow. It's only going to accelerate from here. So what does that mean? How do we cope with that? But the good news in all of this, in my mind, is that you think about the things that I just talked about: change fatigue, manager burnout, alignment. These are all things that internal comms can help with. This is a really big opportunity for our profession to actually stand up and start fixing some of those things. So in some respects, it is a challenging sort of time. But it's also, I believe, a huge opportunity for us. And what will be critical in this opportunity is what we do with AI, because that's the thing that will underpin our abilities moving forward.
I absolutely love it. Of course, I would do, of course, because I train the organisations, especially internal comms people, on how to use AI. So of course, I'm going to say that was brilliant. But also, it's the fact that I think you're absolutely right. I also was talking to Mike about this the other week, and yeah, that whole strategic moment, right? I mean, this is a huge opportunity for internal comms. In fact, I was talking with Natasha about this too. This is a massive opportunity for internal comms to get that seat at the table and to prove, that there is, because there's no better time for internal comms than right now. The mass amount of uncertainty, the mass problems with, in fact, one of the stats that Mike gave me, apologies, Mike, I think I might, you're doing your keynote, but you can't be in two places at once. So this is the about 9% of employees believe their organisation is aligned. That's 9%, right? Now this should be terrifying, really. 9% is very, very low. I mean, don't get me started about the dropping employment engagement levels and whilst productivity is going up and all these different brilliant things that, this is the reason why internal comms is needed as a profession. But that 9% terrifies me personally, because I've also been a boss, right? But if you're in a big organization which is being stressed by this moment of uncertainty, let's not start talking about, global politics and all these other things. We don't need to. Just going through the fifth industrial revolution at the speed we're going through, and only 9% of your employees believe that the organization's aligned, that should be enough anyway for you to pour money into internal comms as quickly as you possibly can. I suppose my real question, which is both to Natasha and to Adrian really here, is how, with your research, how are you seeing AI helping with this moment, or are we not quite there yet? And I'm going to go to Natasha first again, because I'm just old-fashioned sometimes, chaps. I really am.
Yeah, well, I only had a very small sample size, but I would suggest the answer is they're not ready, and because it felt like they're just experimenting with the tools of very moderate use, and it's around, there's still an upskilling, they're still at the upskilling stage, so they're not really getting the most out of the tools because they're just not there yet. Or as Adrian said, there's not really much focus on training and getting people up to speed.
The lack of moment of training. Of course, this is one of the things, isn't it? Especially with the speed this all is happening at, we kind of presume that people, it does make me smile sometimes where organizations presume, they don't want people to be using their different AIs, and then they presume they should know how to use them. And that, I'm just like, you can't do both. Yeah. Or even worse, their AI policy says you can't use anything but Copilot, knowing that Copilot's not necessarily best. And then honestly believing that human beings aren't going to just use a different computer and use a better AI system, which of course is the rise of the secret cyborg, which is what I talk about in my book. But I'm going to pass over to Adrian on this, because I know you have some great research around this part too.
And just tapping into what Natasha just said then too, is that one of the pieces of research that we found is about AI being used for content dominance. So it is about the tools, and is about the fact that we're using it because we want to generate content. Now, that's something we do ourselves all the time, and why are we still thinking in that particular way, which I think is the real worry. The lightning piece, though, I think, is that 8.2% of the participants in the survey, and we had quite a large sample group, said that only 8.2 were involved with leadership on the discussion of AI. So here's the opportunity. Yes, we're jumping into it, we're playing with it from a content point of view, but let's not stay in that tactics and the weeds, because every other person can do that. So how do we differentiate ourselves in that role moving forward as communication professionals, and particularly in internal communications? We know that leaders really are not that good at comms most of the time, and that's where we're spending all of our time developing them. That's why you're in a job, Dan, why I'm in a job. It's because we're forever training leaders on how to be great communicators, and this is the role for internal comms. So they were some stats that really stood out for me, is saying we're not operating at the level we should be operating at now.
Oh, I love that. I know that's also echoed in Mike's research as well. But I also know that Wayne's got some more, so I'm going to let Wayne add on before I chip in and we kind of spiral out into what employment engagement really means. I'm going to let Wayne come in first.
I think there's a general sort of view, not just talking about internal comms, but right across the board, that all of the data that comes out about how advanced people are in their AI usage is actually overestimating the reality. And I think that's actually happening everywhere. For me, in an internal comms how can AI help internal comms? There's a number of different things. The first one is it's that idea of making the function quicker and more agile, being able to do things more quickly, so more productive, if you like, and that frees them up to start to deal with some of these other big areas. The thing I do want to stress, though, here is that there's so much talk about AI and productivity. And what I hear much less talk about is the potential for AI to improve the quality of the work you do. And it's like, if you don't think about that benefit, that improvement benefit, you're actually missing half the benefits. In my view, you need to think both productivity, because that is real, but you need to think about how it can improve you as well. So it can help to actually, really improve and make the comms team more agile, give them space to be, and give them time to be able to deal with some of these bigger issues. And then it can help them deal with those bigger issues as well. To really sort of enable things like crisis comms, enable the way they align the organization, and really make it far more sophisticated. So there are huge opportunities in AI, but to Natasha and Adrian's point, the first step in all of this is actually getting a hang of AI in the first place. It's actually, it's really understanding how to use it as a comms team, and then also, as Adrian says, taking that leadership role in the responsible AI, because that's such a critical piece in all of this.
Absolutely, I can not only responsible from a kind of overviewing point of view, but also then we're not going to get into today, but bias and all these other things that are implicit behind the machine. And goodness gracious, I could get very geeky about all that, but I promise myself I'm not going to, because it could get a bit weird. What I wanted to kind of pick up on here, because I love what you're saying, is that there's probably a couple of stages, isn't there? There's the kind of how do you use AI, how do you start using it well. But I loved your point about this thing around quality. It's actually increasing the quality. It's not increasing the number of loaves of bread you can produce, but actually it's the quality of the bread you're going to produce. It's obviously breakfast here in the UK, and I'm obviously a bit hungry, which is why I've talked about toast there. But the whole thing about quality, isn't it? Because we have this obsession with saving time and productivity and all these things. And my point to people is, yes, do that, but then think about what you're doing with the time. Like, if you're not spending so long to create that, what are you then doing with the time that you do? I mean, don't get me wrong, take some time off. Mental health's a really important thing. Think about, have some stillness in your life, have some white time, have some thinking time. Yes, I get those things, and they're absolutely right. But also as a group, how do we make sure, and as a sector, how do we make sure that we maximize that time save. As I think, as you, Adrian's right, saying, maybe to become more strategic, maybe to use a bit more thinking. And I suppose my big one on this one is then, how does AI then help us with that kind of next bit, which is the data points and the other stuff that perhaps other human beings couldn't do together as a team? I do love that, because I spoke to someone, I trained someone a couple of months ago, and they've saved quite a lot of time using AI, creating these automated interns. They've also sadly lost a member of their team, but they knew that plan was there. But what they're now saying is that the time they've now saved, they can actually help with the stress levels of their job. Their team was under immense pressure. And even now, losing a person, it means they're not under so much pressure, because the AI is helping so much that they can have time together and enjoy their work more, which surely is one of the points of life. So I'm going to bring over to Natasha here, because I know that you've got at least one great example, you don't have to give me the name of the company, where someone has done that in the business.
About AI agents or data analysis?
I thought it was around data analysis rather than AI agents. I'm not going to push you on the
Yeah.
AI agents thing, because I know that's a bit of a secret. So
Yeah, there was one person who said that they'd used a Gen AI tool to analyze their employee engagement survey data, and then used it to identify and categorize the areas for improvement. So I thought that one was quite interesting. They also said something about helping to personalize communication. So I think I saw that as one of the more advanced use cases, really.
And then that's the next level, isn't it? You know, there's learning how to use AI, there's generative AI, then there's generative AI with your own data, and then there's actions because of the data you've then received and then done. I know, Wayne, you're a massive fan of creating reports and other things with these AI moments. I'm not going to ask the chef to kind of reveal his recipes, but I know that you've got some thoughts on that as well, Wayne.
I actually, I've got this fun. What I do when I'm talking to organisations about AI is that I tend to talk in terms of processes, not necessarily in terms of prompts or use cases. And one of the ones that I go through is getting AI to create a survey. And then, because I haven't run the survey, this is a demo that I'm doing, what I do is I get the AI to, okay, create me 100 dummy responses to the survey in an Excel spreadsheet, which it does beautifully. And then I tell the AI, okay, can you now analyze that and give me all the insights that come out of that? And it's a good example of how you can use AI to sort of, you know, work within an Excel spreadsheet, and you can do analysis, because let's face it, we're not, you know, comms people are not necessarily the great analysts out there. It's an opportunity for us to actually really pick up our skills in this area. The other thing I would say is actually deep research, because you're right, Dan, I'm a avid researcher. But when I start using something like deep research, my research capabilities go up, you know, exponentially. And that's that sort of opportunity for improvement. Absolutely.
I love that, and certainly big shout out to I mean, Google's the deep research that Google's just done. I don't know if you've just seen the update that Claude's just done as well. It's insane. And then of course Perplexity is just a piece of godsend for this shenanigans. I don't know if you've just, I promise I won't get too geeky about it, but yeah, certainly the new stuff that Claude's just done in this is chef's kiss. Combine them all together in your chef's recipe, and oh my goodness, I was just doing literally a piece of work that should take me 2 days to do, and it took the machine. I was actually walking to the gym, and this is how geeky I am. I realized I could double my productivity by having 2 mobile phones, both running an AI thing at the same time and going between the two. And isn't that silly? I've got 2 mobile phones. Why wasn't I doing that before? Why have I not been doing that for months? But there you go. I'm going to hand over to Adrian because of the great work he's been doing for a couple of months as well, with some of the final thoughts. So over to you, Adrian, on this.
So a couple of thoughts on this one, and I really, you know, I'm a bit like Wayne. I get really geeked out when it comes to research. I always have, but now it's on steroids because you've got the tools that are available to you. It has taken our research process for big reports, even the one that we've just done, down from probably 2 weeks of effort from collection of data to report out the door, and it's now got it down to 2 days of analyzing, and the day 3 it's out the door. Now, the thing to remember, though, it is all about the human in the process, right? So we've got to make sure that we've got the right data sets, we're interrogating it in the right way, and that's where the research competence comes into play. But you combine the tool with the competence of the practitioner, you've got this beautiful thing. Now, I'm seeing people use AI with something they know nothing about. So how do they actually know that it's producing something that is right? Whereas we're all going, well, we know our practice, we're all experts in internal comms, and we're experts in analysis, but there's people that are just kind of doing it blindly, and that's that customer kind of part to it. So the interesting thing I found with the survey data that we did is really about the lack of training and development in there, the lack of you know, being able to learn the AI. And yes, we should be playing with it now, but we need to be playing with it in terms of the process and where it can be used. We've developed a bit of a model with the center where we're looking at how you implement AI tools, making sure you've got the person at the right category. And a couple of final thoughts from me is where we've got to as a profession, I think, is a really lovely place. So as I said, the session that we had in Venice with the Global Alliance, it was an AI symposium, and it was really to look at the role of communication professionals in responsible AI. So it's very topic based. And what comes out of that is the Venice Pledge, which will be released very shortly, which is saying what is our role as communication professionals, and what do we have responsibility for? Because that's the thing we haven't had to date, is those guardrails. And I think that's okay. When you're playing and exploring, you need to be able to do that. But when you're in the world of consulting or the world of a big business that can get into a lot of trouble with AI, we just need to make sure we've got that covered off. So it's good to see the data being used to actually inform the profession. And if we didn't think we were in a time of massive change right now, think again.
Yeah. If you don't realize this is the 5th industrial revolution yet, my goodness, look at the data. And of course, you folk have done a brilliant job of showing how it is in internal comms. I'm going to pass over to the other two of you. I know we're running slightly over time, but I'm just going to pass over to Natasha first and then Wayne for their final thoughts. Natasha, over to you.
Yeah, final thoughts is that really we need to be using the tools for the things that are really going to add more value. So as Adrian mentioned, in terms of content, most of us are writers anyway. We can probably write you know, better than these tools and as quickly. So what let's look at what else we can use the tools for. So the data analysis piece, sentiment analysis, this stuff is, I think, going to add a lot more value.
I love that. Let's use the AI for what it's good at, not the stuff that we're already good at, for goodness sake.
We're already good at.
Because that's what we're going to. And also, as Adrian Bright said, make sure the human's already involved in the loop. You know, it's great that we're saving this time, but actually that time you should be the editor, not the worker. I'm going to pass over then to Wayne for his final thoughts.
I often think about, if I go off track slightly for a moment, I often think about the boardroom scene in the movie Margin Call, where the character played by Jeremy Irons, there's a point there where he goes, this is it. And to me, it's like for internal comms, this is it right now. We have this opportunity to really step up. And it's not just an opportunity, there's a need. The organizations need us to do it. And so I just think this is a huge moment for our profession. And the first step in all of this is actually to master AI. This is what fascinates me so much about it, is it's going to be so important to our future.
I love that. You cannot get a better summing up. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for being on the call. Thanks to our wonderful guests. Huge thank you to all. Hopefully we'll all see you again. Thanks, Natasha. Thanks, Wayne. And thanks, Adrian. My name's Dan Sodergren. Let's keep this conversation going around internal comms and how we can use AI to make the world a better place. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
See ya.
Dan.